To break it even more down, we turn to Dan Kovalik, professor of international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law and author of the book, The Plot to Control the World, How the U.S. Spent Billions to Change the Outcome of Elections Around the World. Very timely book right now, considering what we're talking about and the timing of this, given the long history of antagonism between the Ukraine and Russia. I have to ask you, with this impending election in March, this latest escalation increasing the danger of war, but isn't this sort of also, doesn't we have to take in the factor of an election coming up within Ukraine?
Well, yes, and you know, one thing I deal with in my book is going back to the 2014 coup, which is many recognize was a coup that the U.S. backed, that brought Poroshenko into the leadership of Ukraine to begin with. And certainly, given that context, one can believe that there's some truth to Russia's fear that this is all being orchestrated by Washington in order to keep Poroshenko, who's not popular, in office.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this. Why is the United States even playing a role in this? I mean, if we're talking about we want to bring power back to the states here on our own land, why are we getting involved in obviously is a neighboring issue between Ukraine and Russia? Why is President Trump even getting involved when he wasn't around to start this conflict back in 2014?
Well, the U.S., ever since, well, even before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S. has seen Ukraine as a wedge that it could use against Russia. Certainly after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S. has continued to meddle in that country time after time to bring about regimes that it views as friendly to the West. And the current confrontation that the U.S. is supporting between Ukraine and Russia is a continuation of that. Essentially, the U.S. wants to use Ukraine as a pawn in its continued Cold War against Russia.
Well, I know that you kind of have to be looking at this and going, but wait a minute, are we not just dealing with 2 years of an investigation into Russian interference into the U.S. elections? And that was supposedly behind the scenes. This is outright the United States getting involved, possibly being used as a toy to try for the Ukrainians to try to fight against Russia. You know, is other U.S. NATO alliances seeking to take advantage of this sort of torment as well?
Well, yes, and again, yeah, you point out an incredible hypocrisy here that the U.S. meddles in other countries like no other country has before, and the U.S. right now, in addition to meddling in the Ukraine, is supporting massive NATO troop movements along Russia's borders, and it appears to want some sort of confrontation with Russia, and I greatly fear that, and I think we should all be afraid of that we could be inching closer to some sort of military conflict with Russia. And we have to remember that both Russia and the U.S. are heavily armed with nuclear weapons, and such a confrontation could end very badly for the entire world.
Absolutely. Well, we do have the G20 coming up, and this is obviously going to be a topic of it. So that, once again, timing. How do you think these kind of discussions will impact the upcoming G20 meeting at the end of the week?
I think it'll make it a very tense G20 meeting. I think it will continue to put strains on an already tense G20. A lot of the unity between these countries is falling apart at the seams over issues like Russia, like Iran, and the nuclear deal that Trump backed out of there. I think this will be a very tense G20.
Well, thank you, Dan, for continuing to follow this. And once again, I think the great word that comes out of our interview is hypocrisy, because I have to say I'm seeing a lot of it right now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.